Oh, I have to let you all know something, and hopefully it won't mess up our relationships. But it's really important that you understand I was born and I've spent my entire life, that's right, my entire life as a white person. Not a day has gone by that I've been Latino, Asian, African. I've never been any of these things. I've been a white person. Now, sure, I might have thought, maybe I'll try it out. Give it a shot. Just all of a sudden decide to change my genes around and make my ethnicity something different, make my ancestry something different. But I found out that you can't do that. Do you know that? You can't do that. I mean, I was born a white person, and unless I spend a lot of time in the tanning booth, I am going to die a white person. I actually had a friend, this is a true story, a friend in high school, and she was a dark-skinned girl, and she hung out with a bunch of dark-skinned girl people, and I was talking to one of my friends one time, and she said, hey, you know that girl, the dark skin? And I said, yeah, whatever. She goes, she's not black. What do you mean? Is she Latino or something like that? No, she's white. Like, oh, okay, she just has a dark complexity. No, she's white as white can be. I'm like, well, I can see her. She's not white. She's like, oh no, she's white. What happened? Well, she goes to the tanning booth every single day, and then she wears the darkest complexity of makeup that she can find to make herself look as dark-skinned as she can. I mean, you're kidding me. Does anybody know this? No. The only reason I know is because I went to elementary school with the girl, and I remember how white she was. Well, what happens when her parents come around? I mean, clearly, people will see. And she's like, actually, she tells her parents never to come to anything. All recitals and everything, she says, don't come because she doesn't want her friends to see that she has white parents. And she says, if they do say that they see the white parents, she just decided that she's going to say that she's adopted to make sure all her friends believe that she's black. All her friends were black girls. So I've got this information now, and I'm kind of conflicted. Because part of me, like most of us, when you get new information, especially in high school, you want to share this. You want to just let everyone know, I've got this secret. But I thought, I couldn't do that because, I didn't want to get between her friendships and everything like that. But thankfully, I didn't have to because, in every group, there's that one loudmouth, that Kramer personality, the ugly baby kind of person that just points it out, right? You know that kind of person that just says the thing that everyone else is thinking? Well, one of my friends was there and heard that, so when we had a chance to talk to some of her friends, they just blurted it out. It's like, by the way, your friend's white. Well, to our surprise, they weren't surprised at all. They knew she was white. And so I said, well, does she know that you know that she's white? She said, no. She thinks that we think she's black. But we know she's white. This is a true story, by the way. So why don't you tell her that you know that she's white? And she said, well, we don't want to upset her because she really takes a lot of pride in her African-American heritage. In fact, she knows more about the African-American heritage, this is what the girl said, than I do. She knows more about it. She's talking about it all the time. And the funniest part about it is she wasn't like, well, let's say it this way. John Mulaney once talked about drag queens. And he says that, what's weird about drag queens is not that they dress up like women, but they dress up like one particular idea of women. Okay? They dress, it's always that woman, that big brassy woman with the big dress and the gator skin heels and the hot beehive hairdo. Right? Like they get their idea of femininity from a Far Side cartoon. That's the idea of, right? That's that woman. Well, it's the same way, like, she didn't act like an African American, she acted like a white person thinks an African American is supposed to act. And she spent all her time just acting like this. And this is her whole high school career. And I thought about this, and I was thinking about this today with all the things that are going on and some of the racial tension and everything, and I was thinking, it would be nice to get a glimpse of what it was like in someone else's skin, to see the world from that, part of me, of course, understands that was not healthy. I'm not saying that was a healthy girl there. I think that she was pretty confused. But it would be nice to be able to get a picture of what other people go through. There was actually reality TV series done about 10 years ago by Ice Cube. Black and White, it was called, where he had a white family who was all dressed up like a black family and a black family that was all dressed up like a white family. And they lived together, and they went to different environments, different cultures to see how they would be treated. If you ever get a chance, I think it's online and you can watch it for free. It's a really illuminating documentary or TV show or whatever that just shows some of the differences and some of the also similarities and some of the things that pass that bond that we perceive separates us. But I've been thinking about this idea of race and the division, and I realized something, that I don't know what it's like to be a black person. But I also don't know what it's like to be born in Vero Beach. I've talked to people that have been born here, and some of them have lived 50 years here, and they tell the story of Vero Beach and how it's changed over time. And I can listen to those stories, and I can learn some perspective on what it's like for those people who have lived here their whole life, whatever their race is, but I still don't know what it's like to live it. When I first married my wife, who, in case you don't know, that was the drummer, she's as white can be. She's basically the absence of color. This woman, she sometimes, when the sun, if you want to get a tan, just stand next to her when she's out in the sun, because you'll get two reflections of the sun, one from the sun and one from her skin. That's how pale she is. But even with that, the fact that she came from a Christian family, that was a white Christian family in the middle class, when we first got married, was there differences of the way that we lived our lives and the things that we thought the way things should operate? Absolutely. It was like the Clash of Clans all of a sudden. Everything that I did one way, she did a different way, and we had to learn how to get along. We had to learn how to figure out how to appreciate the differences in our cultures, which you would think from looking at us wouldn't be that different. But they were completely different. And we had to figure out how to transcend that. And you know the greatest tool that we had to get along in those clashes? Love. Love covers over a multitude of errors. Love, if we love each other, if we start with that premise, that we're willing to love each other, and then the second best tool, what's a tool that just guys, okay, just guys. What tool do you need to get along in your marriage? What's the main thing you have to work on? You're close. I heard someone say it. Listening. Yes, listening, or said a different way, communication, but all those are good. Yes, dear, listening, communication. All the same thing, really, because you listen and then you say, yes, dear. That's your communication. So it works together. But that's the point, is you guys, you need to communicate, right? That's what we need to listen. We need to listen and to learn and to hear. And the more we listen to people and what they've gone through in their life, the more we learn and start to get perspective of what it's like. Now, in the gospel reading today, Jesus comes into contact with a Pharisee lawyer. So this is like, rule on top of rule, okay? This is the legislation of all time. It felt like a law had a baby with another law, and they had a super law child. This is the Pharisee lawyer, and this isn't a lawyer like we think of a lawyer. This is someone who's prided themselves on being an expert in the law. Now, most of us, hopefully not most of us, but a lot of us Christians haven't even read the Bible. We haven't even read the whole thing. But a lawyer, Pharisee, very likely not only had read the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, but had it memorized. They had it down pat. And these were guys, so like guys, we make everything into a competition. Doesn't matter what it is, how stupid it is, we'll make farting into a competition. Oh, I fart larger than you fart, whatever. We're disgusting, okay? We're men, that's what we are. But sure enough, they would make knowing the law into a competition. And they have different competitions of like who know the Torah better and who can sum up the Torah better. And so there was this competition of like how well you did this, and this was one of the kind of questions that Jesus was getting from this lawyer. He's saying, what is the greatest commandment? What is the summary of the law? Sum it all up for us. Tell us what to do. Well, Jesus just asked the question back to him, and he said, what do you say? And he said, well, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. Now, that was kind of a given because everyone said that. The real question was the next divide, which is what comes next. Could be to keep the Sabbath holy. That might be the second most important thing. Obviously, that's a clash that Jesus had with a bunch of Pharisees who put that above the next thing that the guy said, which was from the Rabbi Hillel school of thinking, which is a very famous, well-known rabbi who had this story where he was asked someone to be taught the entire law on one foot. Sum up everything on one foot, okay? So teach me on one foot. And so he had to do that, so he said, okay, I'll do that. Love people. Done. The rest is details, go and learn. That's basically. And he said different ideas of the past have different versions of that story, but that's basically the gist of it. Love people the way you want to be loved. And then he put his foot down and said, now go and learn the details. And so that's the summary. And so when the lawyer here says, love your neighbor as yourself, he's basically saying, I'm with Rabbi Hillel. I think love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus is like, okay, good. I'm with you on that. But then the guy asks the next question, which is, yeah, but who's my neighbor? And the reason that he asked that is not because he was wanting to see Mr. Rogers. It was because he wanted to have as little of a responsibility there as possible. There was this idea in Jewish thought that you don't want to sin. You don't want to break the law. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a fence around the law so that we don't even come close. And this was the perspective that they had with all these details and these regulations that they put on people to make sure that they didn't even come close to breaking the law. And so this guy was like saying, okay, where is that fence? How small? Because depending on where you say my neighbor is, this could be really easy. Because if it's my geographical neighbor, then I'm going to go and move out in the woods, and I'm done. There may be one guy. I can handle that. Right? Depending on what Jesus says, it could be really easy. Because I tell you, all of us, even the sickest, most twisted of us, the most evil of us throughout human history, knows how to usually love at least somebody. We're all capable of at least loving someone in our tribe, in our section that looks like us, that acts like us, that has the same language that us, that we relate to. And we naturally are tribal individuals where we get in these little groups and we just kind of stay in those little groups. That's just human nature. My wife and I had the opportunity to go to Israel. And one of the most riveting stops was at the Holocaust Museum. So we went to the Holocaust Museum in Israel. And one of the things that you'll see as you walk through the hallways and you go through the exhibit, it's like a pathway that you walk in a timeline through what happened. And it starts very subtle. It starts with just a cartoon where there's a Jewish person their nose is just a little bit bigger than it was in real life, right? Their character traits, they just had a little bit more money. They were just a little bit more greedy. And then as you walk, it's farther and farther until that nose becomes bigger and bigger and it goes out like Pinocchio. And then all of a sudden they stop even looking human, where they start depicting these Jewish people as rats or snakes. And these cartoons, it's dehumanizing them over and over. As you go throughout the exhibit, there's this point where you start to see the shoes of some of the victims from the concentration camps. And I was sitting there and I was thinking of this young girl who I met on the plane to Israel, this young Jewish girl. She just happened to sit next to us, but she was just so friendly, and we ended up talking about Jewish law and Judaism versus Christianity and some of the differences, and we got along great, and it was just such an awesome time. And I was sitting there, and I'm just thinking about that these shoes aren't just any shoes. These shoes don't just have no home. These shoes are the shoes of a girl who lived, who had a father and a mother, a son or a daughter. These shoes were of a human being. And then right at that moment where I'm starting to have little tears in my eyes, someone grabs me from behind and wraps their arms around me. And I turn around and I see the Jewish girl who is from the plain embracing me and saying, "Richard, I'm so happy that I saw you. I can't believe we're meeting like this." And I'm like just trying to hold back tears at this moment where this Jewish woman is embracing me. Now, I'm a mutt. I'm a white mutt with different cultures from, I don't know who my father's was. It was everybody, okay? They all contributed. But part of my ancestry is German. And right there, I'm thinking about this Jewish girl hugging this partially German guy as she's saying how happy she is to see me. And I just start crying, and I go say hi to Kate so I can cry in secret. At the end of the exhibit, our tour guide shows us a picture. And it's a picture of this really loving father with his arms around this daughter. And she says, "You know who this man is? This man is one of the main engineers of the Holocaust. He was one of the people that figured out how to kill as many Jewish people as possible." And she says, "I'm showing you this picture to show you that even this guy knows how to love his daughter. Even this guy is a good father." See, it's not a very big statement if you're willing to love your own. That doesn't make you good. That doesn't mean that you're safe. That doesn't mean that you know how to love your neighbor. The question is, can you love the person that's as far different from you as anyone could be? The question is, are you able to love the person even if they have nothing in common with you, but they're in need? Because when Jesus is asked this story by the lawyer, "Who is my neighbor?" Jesus tells the story of a Jewish person that is hurt, maybe even killed. And he's laying on the ground, and here comes a priest, a rabbi, a holy man. And he gets as far away from the body as possible, maybe because he thinks the body's dead and it's going to make him unclean, and he can't do that because he's too important for that. Or maybe it's because he thinks that the person's just faking it and there's risk, because there's risk in going out and loving people in their brokenness. So maybe he just thinks they might be mugging me, and so I'm just going to pass over. But then comes a Levite, kind of like a mini priest, like a deacon, okay? And he comes, and does he do any better? Nope. And then comes the what Samaritan? Good Samaritan. That's how we know, the Good Samaritan. But we sometimes forget who the Samaritans were because we maybe haven't been taught that. The Samaritans were the mixed breeds. They had the Jewish people. They split off from the Jewish people and they started having relationships with other cultures. So this Samaritan in that period with that person would be thought of probably as someone in the 1950s would if they had a one white father and one black mother. That would probably be how they'd be saw as. They hated each other. They had a different religion, and they did not get along at all. In fact, the Jewish people would go way out of their way to not even go to the same town as the Samaritans. Yet this Samaritan saw this person in need, picked him up, put him on his donkey, camel, whatever, I can't remember, and took him all the way, got to the hotel, fixed him up, made sure he was okay, paid extra money. He went the extra mile. And if anyone know that expression, you know where that comes from? That comes from Jesus, who says that when God calls us to love people, he says, love people the extra mile. Go the extra mile to love people. Go to an extraordinary extent. When someone says, go a mile with me, you go two. That's the story that Jesus was sharing. He's saying, go to this extraordinary love of this person, even though they're completely different than you. That's tough. That's a challenge that is not easy to do. Have you ever noticed that a lot of white people will say that all black people look alike? When they look at their faces, they don't see the resemblance. Maybe some of you have had that happen where you can't tell the difference. And some black people see the same thing with white people. You know, there's a reason for that. Our brain processes features. And the more faces we see, the more we start to see what's unique about those facial features. We start to see what's special about that person, and we start recognizing the differences. And as we start to look at the faces more and more, we start to be able to see more and more differences. I have a friend who is Asian, and she came to this town, and originally she thought all white people look alike. And now she thinks that's silly because she's seen so many white faces that eventually she starts to see what's unique about it. And my point in saying that is, if you look at someone long enough, you'll see what's human about them. If you look at someone long enough, if you listen to their story, if you start to actually care enough to start paying attention to what's going on in their life, then they start to become more and more human. They're not just some person. They're someone with a father and a mother, a child, a brother and a sister. There's someone real. There's someone human. And so I know that most of you have probably seen on Facebook something about, if you're on Facebook or the news, if you do that, whatever, but something about the shootings, either of the African American men who were shot by the police or the police officers who were shot. Or you're watching Pokemon Go. That's pretty much everything on my Facebook news feed. That's the two things, Pokemon Go and the shootings. That's it. It's a very unique period in American history right now, where that's the two things, or both, and cat videos, that's a default, and Hillary, yeah, or Trump. But the point is, in those things, one of the things that scares me the most about how I see responses of this is I see a lot of people from one group having a lot of sympathy for the people in the same group, and a lot of people in a different group having a lot of sympathy for the people in the same group, but not really a lot for the others. And I'm wondering what's going on. Are we loving people like the German Nazi soldier loved his child? Or are we loving people like Jesus calls us to, where we love the stranger? Where we love the person that's different from us on the outside, and we start to get to know them and listen to them. See, we can look at a movement like Black Lives Matter, and we can think of it with a critical eye and see all that we see wrong with that. And I'm not saying there's nothing that you could criticize, because every movement is not perfect. But is that what Jesus calls us to when he tells us to go and do likewise? I did a gospel minute on this a couple days ago. You feel free to check it out, and so I'm going to repeat a little bit of that. But there's a movie, Remember the Titans, that I love, and I just think it's a really good example for what we're talking about and what's going on right now in our society. In the movie Remember the Titans, there's a school that was segregated, and they are now having black and white athletes and students all coming together. And they have an African-American coach, and so the students are all now on the same football team, and of course the white students are looking out for the white students, and the black students are looking out for the black students, and they don't like each other at all. So the coach is trying to run it out of them, and he runs them through this forest. And as they're running through the forest, they end in this field that's covered in mist. And all you can see is some tombstones standing there. The coach says, "Do you know what this field is? Do you know what this place is? This is Gettysburg. This is where they fought the Battle of Gettysburg. 50,000 young men died here fighting the same fight we're fighting amongst ourselves today. This green field here was dyed red, bubbling with the blood of young boys, smoke and hot lead pouring through their bodies. Listen to their souls, men. I killed my brother with malice in my heart. Hatred destroyed my family. Listen and take the lessons of the dead. If we don't come together right now on this hallowed ground, we too shall be destroyed." I don't care if you like each other or not, but you will respect each other, and maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll learn to play this game like men. As the movie goes, they start to learn how to play together. And they start to develop this team mentality, and they start winning. And there's this awesome scene where they're in this game that all the refs and everyone's out to get them, but they come together and they're victorious. Great sports movie. But the movie doesn't end there. Because the white captain ends up getting in a car accident, and he's paralyzed. And the most moving scene in the movie to me is when the black co-captain goes to his hospital room, and the nurse says, "No, you can't come in here. This is for only family." Woo, sorry. And the white co-captain says, "What are you, blind? Can't you see the family resemblance? This man is my brother." Go out and listen to people and love people that are different from you because it's the right thing to do. Go out and love people and listen to people because it's what Jesus calls you to do. Or go out and love people and listen to people because your life becomes better, your heart becomes bigger, your love becomes richer, your understanding of humanity becomes deeper, because your family becomes bigger. Go out and love people that are different from you because you'll buy things that are beyond the price that anyone can pay, that are more valuable than all of the riches of gold and diamonds. You'll start to have brothers and sisters, and you learn what love is really all about. Go out and listen. And look. And when you see someone in need, no matter how different they are, and no matter how silly you think their complaint is, listen to their complaint and try to understand it and do what you can to love them. And maybe, just maybe, you'll win a friend. Maybe you'll gain a sister or a brother that when you're in need, and that when you're struggling, ends up being the person that gets you through your darkest hour. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, it's easy for me to love people that look like me, that talk like me, and that walk like me. But Lord, I want to have a life that's deeper than that. Now I know I can never understand fully how to live in someone else's shoes. But Lord, give me a heart that cries out to want to know others and learn about others so that I can understand more what you are about, what this experience is about, and what the family is God is about. Lord, I thank you that when I get to the kingdom of God, when I'm in heaven, it's not going to be a white section and a black section, and it's going to just be people of every shade gathered together in love. Lord, unify us and help us to listen and to learn and to follow you as we start to learn how to better love each other. In Jesus' name, amen.